Good evening. It's a pleasure to host this meeting on the Middle East. It's the second, actually, meeting that we're having after the very first one that we had in March. The title of the meeting will be Changing Regional Political and Security Environment in the Middle East. The meeting is organized by two institutions, by the Faculty of Economics and Administrative Sciences of Nearest University, specifically the Departments of International Relations and Political Science, and the Urla Institute of International Studies. So we thank actually the Urla Institute of International Studies for collaborating with us on their very first actually event of this kind. The talk will actually host 5 speakers. In line, actually, we will have first Dr. Tuğçe Ersoy Ceylan. She will be speaking about geopolitical implications of Israeli responses in the post-October the 7th era. She's from İzmir Katip Çelebi University. The speaker after Tuğçe will be Dr. Özüm Uzun from the Urla Institute of International Studies, our co-host. She'll be talking on the impacts of Gaza War on Iran, changes in regional security. Our first speaker will be Dr. Ömür Atmaca from Hacettepe University. She'll be speaking on Rethinking Palestinian Politics during and after the Gaza War, security dynamics and strategic pathways. Our fourth speaker will be Dr. Nur Köprülü from Nearest University. Reflections of the escalating trends in the Middle East, interplay of domestic and regional dynamics will be her title. And our final speaker, fifth and final speaker, will be Dr. Özlem Tür from Middle East Technical University. She'll be speaking on Türkiye and the war on Gaza, Vadis. So please welcome our first speaker, Dr. Tuğçe Ersoy Ceylan. Hocam, it's a pleasure to host you here. I'll leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Sait Hocam. Good evening to all. First of all, I would like to thank Sait Hoca and Nur Hoca for their invitation for this webinar. Our second part will be today, and I am also very happy to be with my colleagues one more time. Last year, I will.
Actually, we're facing a technical problem.
Okay.
Tuğçe Hocam, excuse me, you just got actually broken for a few minutes. Can I ask you to start? To restart?
Okay, so this is fine now. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so thanks once again. Okay, so last year I tried to display an Israeli perspective on the changing security and politics following the October 7 attacks and following Israel's operation on the Gaza Strip. And today I will continue from that part. However, as we all know, something has changed again in the Middle East. It's the issue of Syria. The Assad regime has collapsed. So there is one more time an uncertain circumstances and situation in the Middle East. Last year, I ended my presentation with the 3 major vectors or possible courses of action for Israel on the post-7 October era. So one possible outcome would be the continuation of war in the Gaza Strip, but albeit in a this trajectory happens to align with the current situation right now and current Israeli government's preferences on the other hand. So this continues. The second possible vector would be the spillover into a regional war. Yes, we have seen such deterioration, especially on April when Iran and Israel sent ballistic missiles to each other. And the third outcome would be a change of leadership in Israel, because there was a domestic protest, and now there is an international pressure, especially on Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu. However, as I said last year, there is still little room for this wishful thinking here. The current coalition staying in power, so the situation is continued as well. So it was possible that this current government would not agree to any Palestinian Authority role in Gaza, or neither they will recommit to a two-state solution. So this is. However, there has been some tiny developments, let's say. I will also touch upon them. What followed the suit since our last seminar on March last year? As I said, Israeli warplanes bombed Iranian embassy in Syria. Afterwards, Iran launched a barrage of missiles and drones in a retaliatory attack on April 13th. And Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in Iran by Israel. And also Mohammed Deif, another leader of Hamas military link, was also killed in an Israeli airstrike again in Gaza. There were operations against the Hezbollah members. Military also carried out targeted strikes against the Hezbollah leaders, and ultimately they killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah on September 28th. So afterwards, Israel entered Lebanon and confronted Hezbollah. So this was the evolving or devolving situation in the Middle East after the October 7 attack. So today I will briefly evaluate the situation from the Israeli perspective, of course, in Lebanon, in Syria, and lastly in the situation in Gaza. As far as the situation in Syria concerned, as we all know, Israeli military captured territory after the collapse of the Assad regime in Damascus. And this territory was on the border in the Golan Heights. And this was the first time Israel had captured any territory in Syria since the war, the Yom Kippur War, or the war in 1973. So what was the aim of the operation? The operation aimed to take control of the buffer zone on the border with Syria and several other key locations on the Syrian side of the border. If you make a flashback, I want to remind the situation there on the border. There was a 1974 agreement, separation of forces agreement between Israel and Syria, and this agreement had created the Golan Heights, and a UN mission, the United Nations Disengagement Observer Force, has been deployed to this buffer zone since 1974. So after the collapse of the regime, Israel warned rebel groups in Syria that if they move close to the Israeli border, the IDF will take action. However, the rebels did not move to the border, but Israel has taken an action. Ultimately, Israel had taken control over the, let's say, strategic Syrian military outpost on Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is the highest point on the border between the two countries. So Israeli purpose was defensive, as was officially explained by the IDF spokesperson. And also, additionally, Israel conducted dozens of airstrikes against the Syrian military bases, facilities, and weapon depots. And they also said that the Israeli officials also said that these strikes targeted Syrian army air defense systems, artillery batteries, and facilities that were connected to the past Syria's chemical weapons program. So Israelis are believing that they have a responsibility to make sure that the strategic weapon system of Syrian army doesn't fall into the wrong hands. They refrain from targeting any special group or any name. And at the beginning of this week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Israel Katz visited the border, and they were briefed by the IDF commanders. And Netanyahu has taken the fall of Assad to himself, and he said that the collapse of the Assad regime offers a great opportunity for Israel. And as I've said, he claimed that it was the direct result of Israel's action against Hezbollah and Iran. But about the military's incursion into the buffer zone, Prime Minister released two statements. This is important because in the English language statement, he described this incursion as a temporary step, but on the Hebrew statement, the word temporary weren't there. So are we looking at an expanded occupation or expanded control of the Golan Heights by Israel? What might be the implications of this move by IDF? So a quick read of events in Syria is that any development that are a setback for Iran are good for Israel, as we already know. However, in the Middle East, it is not very safe to act that simple. I want to mean that. So the likely resumption of the large-scale fighting and the instability in Syria will probably present a different set of challenges for Israel. The groups that have taken Aleppo and then Damascus are Sunni Islamists, and they are originating as the Syrian branch of Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda is no friend of Israel. So having Syria, which is controlled by the Sunni Islamists or jihadists, let's say, is not going to benefit Israel in the absolute terms. Assad was the devil Israel knew, despite being an Iranian proxy. So secondly, from the Israeli perspective, Turkey's role in Syria would be another factor. According to Israel, of course, the rebels are backed by Turkey, despite the fact that Turkey denies that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is being backed by Turkey. So according to, again, Israeli interpretation, the success of these rebel groups is going to increase Turkish involvement in and influence over Syria. And this comes at a time when Israeli-Turkish relations are at their nadir, and as Turkey has become the de facto, let's say, headquarters of Hamas political leadership. And in recent weeks, there have been meetings between the Israeli and the Turkish intelligence officials. And this shows us a greater willingness on Israel's part for Turkey to play a role in the ceasefire negotiations in Gaza. But on the other hand, we also know that Turkey has imposed a complete trade embargo on President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is Israel's harshest non-Iranian, let's say, regional critic. So this would be a factor or an implication for the course of Israel's action in Syria. And another factor in this web is how renewed fighting in Syria impact Jordan. I believe Nur Hoca could elaborate that part too. However, from the Israeli perspective, I can say that even if the Sunni jihadist groups like HTS do not represent a direct military threat to Israel, they do to Jordan. So anything that creates instability in Jordan is bad for Israel. So for the time being, the situation is not so cut and dry for Israel in Syria. But the fact that Israel is now in Syrian territories is telling something to us. These territorial swipes could be a pretext for another war. I guess I should stop here. Yes, I will stop here, Sait Hocam.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Now, if you want to say one final word, we can actually take that too.
Actually, I have lots of words to say. However, my time has ended, so we can skip to Dr. Özüm.
Okay, let us expand on them on the question and answer sessions.
Okay.
Now, after listening to Dr. Tuğçe's actually presentation on Israel, we'll be moving on to Dr. Özüm Uzun. She's our co-host from Urla Institute of International Studies, and she'll be speaking on impacts of Gaza War on Iran and changes in regional security. But before that, Hocam, thank you very much actually for collaborating to make this meeting a reality.
I thank all of
The
you,
floor is yours.
Professor Nur Köprülü and you, Sait Hocam, and to organize this webinar with Near East University. I'm so excited to announce the foundation of Urla Institute of International Studies and for collaborating with you. So I think that we can move to the Gaza War on Iran. As you know, we did the first part of this conference last year in Near University, and but after that period, there are lots of changes, at least for Iran, because of course, I mean, the regional dynamics has quite changed, and the perceptions or the threat assessment of all regional countries have changed. But the greatest challenges created for Iran, I think, because in the first conference, I underlined mostly the continuities in Iranian foreign and security policies after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. I mentioned the concepts of axis of resistance and the emphasis of the Iranian decision makers on the resistance diplomacy when they did the regional visits immediately after the post Gaza War. And also I mentioned the anti-American and anti-Israel discourse in Iranian foreign policy as a continuity since 1979, and also or desire of Iran to become a regional power, and related with that, its ambitions and its insistence on having nuclear capability, even though they are underlining that this nuclear program just aims for civilian purposes, but there are lots of questions, you know, among the international community. So these are the first part of the Gaza War, and it continues until the second phase, I call it, and this second phase started by the assassinations of leaders of Hamas, Hezbollah, and also Iranian leaders, and specifically the attack, Israeli attack against Iran's embassy in Syria. So after these assassinations of leaders by Israel, and also targeting Iranian proxies, Iranian facilities, and embassy in Damascus, changed the regional dynamics. And after a while, the mutual ballistic missile attacks occurred between Israel and Iran. And as you remember, in the first conference, we have discussed whether this Gaza war will expand to the region. And Iran, at that time, all Iranian decision makers underlined that they don't want to expand this war, and they didn't want to open a new battlefield for or against Israel. And they always, at every occasion, underlined that they don't want to have a regional war, and because of that, they didn't give a green card to attack against Israel, who were dealing with Gaza in the south, but they didn't open any front from the northern Israel. Of course, there were some rocket attacks by Hezbollah, but it was not a war actually. So they always attempted, they always aimed to prevent such a regional war. But after the mutual attacks between Israel and Iran, of course, we can mention some challenges and serious challenges on Iranian politics. Internally as well. First of all, I'd like to say something, because for the previous evaluation, I mentioned that Iran did not want to expand this war to turn to a regional war. But of course, please keep in mind that we cannot talk about a monolith voices in Iran as well. There were some hardliners arguing that Iran had to or should involve actively to fight against Israel. And they stated that, or in their threat assessment, they mentioned that the destruction of Hamas would continue with the collapse of Hezbollah, and also this chain will inevitably result in military attack against Iran. So because of that, in their threat assessment, they argued to actively involve to fight against Israel. But of course, I mean, Iranian decision makers officially rejected, did not agree with that call. But the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria recently, which was not expected by Iranian decision makers this past, to some extent, it seems that strengthened this assessment of the hardliners. So in a few months, this call would increase in Iranian politics. But on the other hand, of course, there are lots of disagreements to that viewpoint in Iranian politics in Iran. So in the recent situation, what happened? I think that Iran is in the block of defeated, or the country that lost very much. So the link between Iran's resistance groups is disconnected right now. So regarding the continuity since 1979, it seems that Iran has to revise its axis of resistance policy, even though the supreme leader or president underlined that the axis of resistance still continues and still quite strong. But the reality here in the Middle East, the resistance groups are disconnected. And also another major challenge in the second phase of Gaza war recently comes from Israel, of course. The assassinations of leaders, not only the proxies of Iran or Iran-backed groups, but also its own leaders damaged so much. And it damaged not only the policies or the capability of the resistance groups here, but also it damaged the image of Iran as well. And also the Israeli attacks against Iran, I think, damages so much, and it has or it would serious consequences on Iran. And in most of the media, it was so ignored or commonly ignored, which cities were targeted by Israel, because there are quite rapid changes in the Middle East, in Syria, in Gaza, and also there are lots of political changes, the competition over the political posts. But since the late of October, the attacks of Israel against Iran are seen quite significant. They are not kind of a regular military sits. For instance, on the late of October, Israeli Defense Forces confirmed that they are conducting precise strikes on military targets in Iran. And also Iranian authorities as well confirmed this information. And it is mentioned that Iran's air defenses, missile and drone production, and launch facilities were targeted. It seems that Israel aims to limit Iran's ability to manufacture long-range ballistic missiles by targeting mixing equipment used to produce solid fuels for ballistic missiles. Because, Iran cannot produce it by itself, solid fuel mixers, and it's getting from China. And to buy new mixers from China will take at least a year. So it would mean a significant challenge for Iranian ballistic missile program or missile program. And also it seems that Iranian nuclear sits are also or are already a target of Israeli attacks. Israeli, for instance, forces attacked on Karaj, where it is known that centrifuge industry of Iran's nuclear program locates, as one of the examples. And also the attacks, Israeli attacks on the Partian military. This is a base on the outskirts of Tehran. Also demonstrate that Israel has been targeting Iran's nuclear facilities, because Partian base is one of the sits that IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, has accused Iran of conducting tests of high explosives that will pave the way to produce nuclear weapons. So these targets in Iran or the attacks of Israel are not targeting a regular military basis. So it is very important and also very serious challenge for Iran right now. So by the second phase of Gaza war on Iran, we can count the challenges rather than continuities in contrast to the first phase. So the axis of resistance or resistance diplomacy in the terms of Iranian decision makers is vacant. I cannot say that they just abandoned this policy, but it is significantly vacant. And also the attacks of Israel against Iran, Iranian military facilities are seen producing or leading to create new challenges for Iran's desire to become a regional power. And also, as Dr. Tuğçe mentioned, the Israeli perspectives on Syria, and they are still dealing with attacking Syrian strategic weapon system is also quite related with the Iran. Of course, as Tuğçe mentioned, that they don't want these weapons to transfer to the wrong hands, but also these infrastructure or these weapons must be prevented to be transferred to Iran or Iran-backed groups as well. The second phase of Gaza War, which starts by the assassinations of leaders, are creating serious challenges for Iran right now. And because of that, Iran has been naming that the Syrian developments, the recent developments, the advance of the rebels are the result of United States and Israel game. And also they pointed yesterday, the Supreme Leader pointed yesterday that the regional another regional country paved that way to these recent developments in Syria this past. So in Turkey, of course, it is understood that these neighboring countries, Turkey, but in Iranian press, not only Turkey is mentioned, but also Qatar and Jordan are mentioned to these neighboring countries. And there are lots of accusations and for these countries on making a negotiation for natural gas, for the transport of the natural gas from Qatar to Europe. So this is Iranian perspective, but of course we can say so much on Iranian perspectives and also perception. But I think that our moderator is seen on the screen, and I'm done. I have to finish my presentation, but I can answer your questions on Iran at the end.
Sorry, Hocam, for the pressure. We're actually running very tight with the time, so thank you actually for finishing on time. After Iran, we're visiting Palestine, and we will listen to Dr. Ömür Atmaca from Hacettepe University on Palestinian politics. Ömür Hocam, can you unmute yourself? Your microphone?
Okay. Good evening.
The floor is yours.
Good evening for everyone. Thank you very much, my professors, Dr. Sait Akşit and Dr. Nur Köprülü. This is very, it is a great night for us to come together and talk about, Palestinian politics. Well, in this wonderful event, we explore a pivotal and turbulent change, turbulent chapter in Middle Eastern politics, one that has unfolded since the events of October 7th. And this evening, I will examine how Palestinian politics have evolved following the 7th of October, with a particular focus on developments since the seminar we held in March this year. First of all, I would like to start my words again with the reconciliation efforts between Hamas and PLO. Historically, these two factions have been at odds, representing distinct political ideologies and strategies. And the 2023 Gaza War underlined the urgent need for Palestinian unity, as both Hamas and the PLO faced immense challenges in its aftermath. The international community, particularly through Chinese mediation, has encouraged dialogue aimed at bridging this divide. However, these past initiatives have repeatedly failed due to the deep-seated disagreements over control and strategy. But this time, regional actors like Egypt and Qatar, have played crucial roles in facilitating dialogue between Hamas and PLO. Egypt particularly convened talks with Fatah and Hamas leaders in the beginning of December, in the beginning of this month, with the aim of establishing a governing body for Gaza, led by professionals and technocrats not affiliated with either, faction. While this approach underlines Egypt's central role in shaping Gaza's future, it also reflects international support, particularly from the United States, for a governance model that emphasizes security and stability. What happened in this meeting? In this meeting, Hamas showed its willingness to hand over the administration of Gaza to a proposed Palestinian Unity Committee. This was accepted as a major concession aimed at fostering cooperation with Fatah. And under this plan, of course, this should be approved by Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas, the committee will consist of 10 to 15 independent figures, and this committee would make decisions on several issues such as humanitarian aid, education, health, the economy, and reconstruction in consultation with the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah. It is also proposed that this committee will take control of the border crossing with Egypt in the south of the Gaza Strip on the Gaza side. And despite these obstacles, Hamas' acceptance of the Egyptian proposal reflects a significant shift in its strategic outlook. This offer reflected Hamas' weakened position after a year of, devastating conflict. However, Fatah's rejection of the plan has delayed its implementation, underlining the ongoing challenges of building trust between the factions. I think here we should look at the leadership changes and weakening of Hamas. Hamas indeed has faced significant internal and external challenges since the war. The assassination of key leaders, as Özüm Hoca and Tuğçe Hoca mentioned, including Yahya Sinwar and İsmail Haniyeh, has left a leadership vacuum that further complicates its operational capabilities. The organization, I mean Hamas, now struggles with fragmented leadership, insecure lines of communication, and, weakening military resources. Halil El-Hayya, a senior Hamas leader, has emerged as a central figure in, reconciliation talks. However, the rejection of the Egyptian proposal by Fatah's executive committee shows that further negotiations are needed to address governance and security concerns. And despite its military and political weakness, Hamas remains a potent ideological force capable of mobilizing support among Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, and also the diaspora. But its diminished capacity as a governing entity underscores the need for a more cohesive Palestinian political leadership. Therefore, the Egyptian brokered talks, while fragile, highlight the potential for new governance arrangement in Gaza. Well, here, another important and significant development in the recent months is the expulsion of Hamas from Qatar. Since its eviction from Syria in 2012, Hamas leadership in Qatar has been a cornerstone of its international operations. And since 2012, Doha has served as the headquarters of Hamas, international political office. And this pragmatic decision reflected a shared understanding between the United States and Israel of the need for stable channels of communication with the Hamas leadership. Indeed, for Qatar, this role enhanced its strategic value to US foreign policymakers. Well, Qatar, at the end, provided Hamas with a political base, financial support, and access to regional diplomacy. This arrangement proved largely successful for a decade. During this decade, Hamas consolidated its local authority in Gaza while receiving billions in aid through Qatar and also other channels. And this funding supported its civil administration, and we know now that the construction of an extensive underground military infrastructure throughout Gaza. The apparent stability in Gaza served several strategic objectives. For example, it prevented the emergence of much more extreme groups such as Islamic Jihad, while maintaining a fragmented Palestinian opposition that kept Hamas and Fatah divided, which was a key objective of successive Israeli governments, indeed. This passive approach to crisis management appeared successful until the catastrophic attacks of October 7th. Israel's policy towards Hamas followed two increasingly contradictory tracks here. While pursuing limited engagement through Qatari mediation, with, of course, occasional results, for example, a ceasefire in November 2023, Israel simultaneously sought to fundamentally change the status quo by destroying Hamas military capabilities. Well, this latter goal, however, proved impossible without the destruction of Hamas as an entity and the extensive destruction of Gaza's infrastructure, with the attendant high civilian casualties. And in this context, Hamas' room for negotiation was reduced to a demand that it destroyed itself or face continued attack. However, growing international pressure and changing regional dynamics have led to a reassessment of this leadership. And Qatar's decision on 8th of November to expel Hamas leaders from Doha under US pressure marked a significant shift, of course, in Middle East diplomacy. The decision was largely prompted by stalled progress in ceasefire negotiations and hostage releases between Israel and Hamas. particularly following the execution of hostages in recent months, including a US citizen. And Hamas was initially widely expected to go to Turkey, but questions remain about the permanence of both its departure from Qatar and its reception in Turkey. Well, we can say that here Israel is trying to reshape Palestinian politics to create conditions incompatible with the, existence of Hamas, and this goal seems unattainable. But until the Israeli leadership recognizes this, Hamas' role in regional politics remains uncertain, I believe. And I also believe that the focus on exile and the targeting of the Hamas leadership are tactical moves without strategic direction. Whether Hamas operates from Doha, Ankara, Tehran, or Gaza is less important than this fundamental disconnect and the broader absence of a coherent vision by Israel, the Palestinians, or the international community for the future Arab leadership in Gaza. Well, I will conclude my speech. As we reflect on the past year, it is clear that Palestinian politics is at a critical juncture. The convergence of internal divisions, regional escalations, and global power shifts underscores the urgent need for a coherent strategy to address the multiple challenges facing Palestine. The relationship between Hamas and the PLO and the future of Hamas leadership are crucial to the future of Palestinian politics. Therefore, I can say that the reconciliation between Hamas and the PLO is not only a political necessity, but a way to address the broader aspirations of the Palestinian people for self-determination, justice, and peace. And thank you for listening me. I think I should stop here.
Thank you, Hocam. Thank you, Hocam, for actually a broad, detailed presentation on Palestinian politics. Now we will move to Dr. Nur. She'll be giving us information on the interplay of domestic and regional dynamics in the Middle East. Hocam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sait Hocam. And I would like to first of all express our gratitude for the distinguished panelists and their presence. It's a great pleasure to host you all, and hope next year we can arrange another one face-to-face in person. Last time, as far as I remember, it was on the 22nd of March. It was a Friday. It was Friday, I remember. I talked about the political landscape of the region, how it was before, prior to 7th of October, and what has changed since 7th of October. Today, I will try my best to shed a light on what has happened since March 2024, because there are a lot of things that have been actually unfolded. So I would like to explain as much as I can, as permitted by time. Last time, one of the main point that I wanted to underscore was related with the fact that before 7th of October, there was a kind of understanding that the normalization of Israel in the region, by normalizing its ties with countries, with the Gulf countries, and also with Sudan and Morocco, and also with the deal of the century, which was announced during Donald Trump's first, we can say, administration, would also empower the Palestinians, and it will also going to bring more prosperity to the region and security at the same time. We have also seen that there was a Lebanese-Israel-Gaza deal, and as we all know, Lebanon and Israel, they don't have diplomatic ties. this was also it was a U.S. brokered actually Gaza deal. Then we were also witnessing the normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, but this was not actually happened because we had October 7th, and then of course the war on Gaza, and now we can also mention about how it was escalated across Lebanon, and now we also have certain changes, dramatic changes in Syria. What I would like to underline here today is three important turning points or breaking points that we can explain the regional politics. I know my time is limited, but I would like to underscore three important time periods that how they are also interrelated and what certain extent of continuities and changes we have today. When we consider the post-independence eras of the countries in the region, I'm basically mentioning the end of the Second World War and the post-Second World War era. Most of the countries, they took their independence, and then some they took during 1950s. Simultaneously, in the meantime, we also had a Cold War at the international level. That's why we also say that we had another Cold War in the Middle East, and basically we also call the Arab Cold War, because there were ideological confrontation, antagonisms at the same time. And we had two hegemon countries, that USSR and United States, that they involved in the region, especially after the Suez War. We had this shift of power balance in the region. And then there were three important capitals that I need to explain in the region. Of course, apart from Turkey and non-Arab countries like Turkey, Israel, and Iran, there were three important capitals that actually the Arab regional politics were, in a way, driven. Cairo, Egypt, Damascus, Syria, and of course, Baghdad, Iraq. This was the basic, the parameters that we can understand the regional politics. And of course, no need to mention the impact of Arab nationalism. With the Camp David in 1979, the things started to change. And for some, this was also one of the main reflections of the end of Arabism. Even the decline in Arabism was something intertwined with the 6-7 war, with the loss of the Arab countries in 6-7 war. Then we had the post-Camp David order. We basically call it like that. That during the same year, we had Iranian Islamic Revolution in 1979. We have Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And at the same time, Egypt and Israel, they normalized their ties. And for the first time, an Arab country recognized Israel. And from this time and onwards, we basically call the post-1979 era as post-Camp David order. So one of the main pillars of this order, which is also promoted by United States at the same time, is the security of Israel, plus, of course, the free flow of the oil, and of course, stability and order should be maintained in the region. Then we had the Oslo Accords with the end of the Cold War, which was a really important turning point that we have, in our entire history, we can say, with respect to the Palestine-Israeli conflict. But the things then set back, because we had a unipolar system. But when we look from today's perspective, the third important, we had the Cold War politics, the Arab Cold War. Then we also had the end of the Cold War and the unipolar world, I may call it. So we have the transformation of the regional politics. We have basically the Gulf War in 1990-1991 that actually weakened the position of Iraq. And then I may also mention one of the most important turning points as 2003 US intervention in Iraq and the subsequent Arab uprisings. I think in order to understand today, because when I look from, for the last 1 year, the escalation of the conflict, right after the Arab uprisings specifically, there has been a new distribution of power in the region, or so to speak, a new regional order in progress, or a reconfiguration of power in the region. Why we can mention about this? Because after the Arab uprisings, I'm not talking about the internal dimensions of the Arab uprisings, like democratization, but rather how the power is redistributed in the region. Because in the beginning, it has been claimed that Israel is going to be one of those countries that would pay the cost of the uprisings, because those countries that, like Egypt, they may, lose their cordial ties with Israel. However, in the medium term, we started to see that rather than engaging, particularly I'm talking about the United States, US, rather than engaging militarily in the region, wanted to retreat from the region, and in return, in order to talk about a new regional order, we started to see this normalization efforts, as I just mentioned in the earlier, before in the earlier part of my speech. So with the Arab uprisings, as I said, in the meantime, we started to see that the power distribution started to move towards and in favor of the Gulf countries, because now we don't have Damascus. As I just mentioned, as one of the main area of making politics in terms of foreign policy or determining actors of the Arab regional politics. Egypt was also for a while very much engaged in dealing with internal issues, transition, and we had civil war in Syria, we have war in Yemen, and also in Libya. We have also NATO's intervention. So with the Arab uprisings, none of these countries that I just mentioned before, they actually maintained their regional roles. Rather, we also we had this power distribution move towards in favor of the Gulf countries, and in the meantime, Israel. So the rising powers after 2011, we may say, are Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and Israel. And of course, we cannot underestimate the role of Iran. With the post 7th of October, now we can talk about another era. And then when I check the news, especially for the last couple of months, what I have seen basically that I can underline is redrawing the map of Middle East, Israel's new Middle East, Netanyahu's new Middle East, because just before the 7th of October, actually with the Abraham Accords, what has been wanted to achieve was something, having a new Middle East or a kind of a regional order through diplomacy and trade, as the UAE Emirati calling connectedness or interdependency. However, with the Hamas attack and what has happened afterwards in Gaza and the escalation across Lebanon, we can see that we have more, the regional actors involved, before the 7th of October, but after the 7th of October, we can say that we started to see more the use of force, in trying to make this order to happen. In other words, when we look to the power reconfiguration in the region, I would argue that the domestic, regional, and the global dynamics that are all closely intertwined with one another. So the war which started, the conflict which started on 7th of October, we have its still domestic regional ramifications over the region. And if I also can mention about this close interplay between domestic and the regional factors, I think it was Tuğçe Hocam that mentioned about the escalation across Lebanon and the transformation and the downfall of Assad regime in Syria would definitely have repercussions on the neighboring countries, particularly on Jordan elsewhere. And you all know that because we are all discussing these topics frequently, that Jordan and Lebanon are among those countries that have been devastatingly affected by the Palestine-Israeli conflict in the region. Lebanon is one of those countries that actually already become a part of the Palestine-Israeli conflict. And then we have the Lebanese political landscape, very much unstable for several reasons, but even the sectarianism itself is also very much related with, let's say, regional ramifications. Regarding Jordan, when I would like to give a quotation, particularly from the foreign minister of the country, of the kingdom, Ayman Safadi, he was among those Arab leaders in the region that often criticizing what's going on Gaza, and particularly in West Bank, because Jordan is one of those countries that have the potential to be affected negatively by second, let's say, a possible second Nakba. In this respect, I would like to complete my speech, and if there is any question, I would love to answer. So, thank you very much, Sait Hocam.
There are Hocam, actually. Thank you very much for the speech. Now we have Dr. Özlem Tür, Özlem Hocam with us. She'll be giving us a brief on Turkey and the war on Gaza. Vadis. The floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sait Hocam. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here with all of you. I know that we are running out of time, so I will try to summarize some of the major points which I would like to make, and I will be building on what Nur Hoca has already mentioned regarding the regional order and the key developments, and I will try to place Turkey within this new regional, calculations and the making of the new Middle East, where we are in this context. As we know, I will be using Turkey and Türkiye interchangeably. I still can't manage to call each time Türkiye. But as we know,
I think we're facing a minor technical problem with Özlem Hoca. She's frozen. Okay. We have actually a number of questions on the comment section. I will be passing on to these questions, and can you please inform me when Özlem Hoca is back so that we can actually pass the floor to her? Can you add everyone to the stage, actually, if we may? Thank you, Hocam. Okay, until Özlem Hoca joins us back, if I may, actually, we can proceed with a number of questions. There are specific questions that are directed to Özüm Hoca. First, let me start with them. And actually, let me join a couple of questions, if I may. There is one question by Parsa Alizadeh. He's actually trying to understand Iran, whether it would be okay for Iran to stop its involvement after securing Assad's position in Syria. And, adding to this question, whether Iran is able to, whether Iran knows where to stop or not, in this sense. And there is another one, if I may, from Abu Bakar Jallo, from another student of ours, on Iran again. His question is Iran losing its position as one of the Middle East regional powers, given the fact that it hasn't been engaging on the recent fall of the Assad's regime? So can we think of the questions together?
Sure. Thank you very much for these great questions. And I will start with Parsa's question. Actually, for Iran, we have to calculate. And also we have to see what has happened to Iran until the collapse of the Assad regime. In my presentation as well, I attempted to explain how it is damaged so much. Actually, these damages not only for its own military leaders, but also the leaders of the proxies were assassinated, and also its president was died in a helicopter accident. And there are lots of questions on that, even though officially they stated that it was an accident, but the questions were raised on that issue as well. And also capability of Hamas and Hezbollah weakened. And most importantly, I think Iranian borders were violated several times by Israel and also Mossad. And these have not been happened recently. Since a very long time, Iran has been dealing with Israeli attacks, and as a result of these damages caused by Israel, I think that Iran couldn't maintain its support to Assad regime. And also, these are just the readings from the recent developments. And Özlem joined us. I will finish very quickly my answer. And also the president of Iran during the Doha summit declared that or announced that Assad regime was defeated by a psychological war. And also he stated that Iran warned the regime, Assad, but he didn't take into consideration. And also he mentioned, because remember that the Doha summit was the very beginning of the rebels activities, and he stated that what's surprising for Iran, of course, is that Syria's insufficiency in ability and also the advance of the rebels this fast. So I think it couldn't maintain its support. And most probably, the Iran also knew that Russia accepted something over Ukraine and lost its attention on Assad regime. So of course we do not know very 100%, of course. I'm just speculating, but these are the possible answer. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Hocam, for filling up the space. Özlem Hocam.
I was talking very passionately on this side, and suddenly it all went, and I didn't know what to do. So could you hear me at all?
You were actually frozen at a point when you were elaborating where Dr. Nur left, but then all went wrong.
Okay, great.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'll try to keep it quick, and many apologies. I don't know why this happened. I watched everyone without any problem, and then when I started speaking, it just went. So what I was in looking at Turkey's foreign policy towards Gaza or the Palestinian issue, I will leave my presentation aside and make the points that I want to make, not to take so much time. One of the first issues which I would like to emphasize is that Turkey does not have a Palestinian policy. Turkey has, for over a decade now, or for over almost 2 decades, I would say, since 2004, the killing of Sheikh Yassin, has more of a Gaza policy. So when we are evaluating Turkey's policy towards the Palestinian issue, we actually have for some time a Gaza policy. So when Turkey reacted the way it did to the developments in Gaza, it was more or less expected for many of us who has been underlining that Gaza had a special place in Turkey's approach to the Middle East and to the Palestinian issue in particular. A second point, which I want to make, is that there has Turkey's approach to Gaza issue, or the war in Gaza, to post 7 October events, had obviously different phases. I'm not going to go into details, but especially the escalation has went further in July 2024, where Turkey actually, for the first time, threatened to go militarily into Gaza. And this was more of a surprise in the sense that although Turkey has been so far until this point trying to bring in diplomacy, trying to mobilize the Arab League, trying to mobilize the Muslim world, trying to mobilize the general global south, so to say, on the Palestinian issue, which it was to some extent successful, we started to see, especially from May 2024, but an escalation in July, where Turkey actually threatened militarily to intervene into Gaza. And this was really interesting to underline because this was the time when, and this all built upon Turkey's previous discourse on Hamas not being a terrorist organization. Hamas was defending Anatolia, and not only was defending Gaza or Palestine, but that we see Turkey placing Hamas as a defender of the republic itself in Turkey. So this was also a novelty in the sense that we saw a special emphasis given to the defense of Gaza, and also Hamas seen as an integral part of Turkey's own defense, which was interesting. We have seen a lot of escalation in the words between Israel and Turkey during this time. We both, for example, heard Erdogan saying, as I said, there is no reason that Turkey could not act militarily in Gaza if it wanted to. And Israel responding that Erdogan was actually following the footsteps of the dictator Saddam Hussein as it was threatening to attack Israel. And then Erdogan has said, just as genocidal Hitler ended, so will genocidal Netanyahu. And this, escalated over and over, where Turkey has ironically equated Netanyahu with Hitler, and the genocides equating the Holocaust, which was going on in Gaza, which has actually led to an important resonance, made an important reciprocity in the global south and in the mobilizing of the global south, which was important. So why? Why did Turkey, escalate the discourse to such a level, and what is in this to understand, looking at Turkey's foreign policy? And here I will try to underline 3 major points of why Turkey is taking a pro-Hamas stance. Why is Turkey considered in any negotiation process as a guarantor of the Hamas side? And why did Turkey staunchly place itself in this camp? The first argument, which I'm going to make, is obviously about ideology. Although we have seen the Muslim Brotherhood ideology of Turkey waning somehow since 2020, as it tried to make up with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. We still see that there is an inherent closeness of the Turkish regime with Hamas ideologically. And adding to this, a legitimizing discourse of security has also been important. And as Hamas was portrayed as defending Anatolia, not only the region, from Israeli expansion, this has somehow can be explained from a common ideological standpoint in general, and Turkey defending its ally in the region. A second point, which I would like to make, has to do with the domestic constituency. The elections results last year has proved that there was a lot of loss of heart, especially in the conservative circles, regarding the Turkish government's stance towards Israel. And it was estimated that the AKP government has lost votes because it continued to trade with Israel, and it was more in rhetorics than deeds in threatening Israel and taking a stance on Gaza. So we see that in order to build on this domestic constituency and deliver to the domestic constituency, there was this enhanced discourse on Gaza, and appealing to the streets, appealing to the domestic constituency has been important in this context. Maybe more important in my analysis is that the AKP government in Turkey has saw this as an important vehicle to reach the regional masses and the streets, and also to appeal to the global south in general. And here I would like to build on what Nur Hoca has already mentioned in a chronological approach to what was going on in the region and the regional order in general. And I read this more as Turkey's stance to prevent the dominance of an Israeli-supported Gulf-led order, Middle East order in general. Looking at what Paul Salem has written in 2020 in a very nice and easily read article, Salem is talking about 2.5 orders in the Middle East. He's talking about one Israel, he's talking about an Arab core-led order, but I read to this, I add to this, or I read this as an Israel-supported, Gulf-centered Middle East pole, or a core, which is there. A second core or a second pole which drives regional politics was the Iranian-led pole. And Salem talks about a half order or a half pole. He talks about 2.5 poles, and the half pole is the Turkey-led regional order, where he's talking about Turkey and its influence in Syria and Libya to some extent. I add to this Qatar as well, and I'm saying that this half order is composed of a Turkey-Qatar alliance in this context. So looking at why Turkey took the stance it did towards Gaza had a lot to do with the wish, let's say, desire to prevent an Iranian-led, an Israeli-led or Israeli-supported Gulf order at this time. So Turkey's regional projection, where it wanted to open space for itself in the regional reconfiguration, its desire to lead the new order. And again, in my analysis, trying to be not the half core, but the full core, the full center of the regional order. Turkey has taken a more severe stance against Israel. And I see this as a competition between Iran-led, Israel Gulf-led, and Turkish-led orders in the region at large. Just one word before I finish. Obviously, the Iranian-led order has collapsed terribly since 7 December, the events in Syria. So now how I see it and how I think the Turkish foreign policymakers should see it is that there is now 2 large projections on in the region. One, it seems now, is a Turkish-led one, and the other one is an Israeli-led one, where both of these actors seem to be winning in what's happening in Syria. So I think we should not only see this as the AKP ideology or a domestic constituency, which both play a role in the loud opposition the Turkish government has been taking against Israel. But it has a lot to do also with the regional interests and regional politics, which is at stake for Turkey. So thank you very much.
Hocam, thank you very much. I mean, for finalizing actually with this broad discussion on the order and what expects us. Can we add everyone to the stage now? I think once everyone joins us, we can move on to the question and answer session. Right. Okay, great. Welcome back. Now we have a number of questions actually on the comment section. I will elaborate some of them or stage by stage approach actually in order to create a discussion here. Some of the questions are directed to the panel, some are directed to specific people, and I will call that out whenever possible. There are a couple of questions on the US, if I may actually add these first. Here, Tawassul Hamad basically asks, a student of ours actually, asks a question on US involvement in the Middle East. And her interest is to see whether the war in Gaza and Syria actually would be positions that drove the United States back into the picture, into the Middle East picture. If I may add, if we can reflect on the question from Dr. Çıraklı from Near East Institute, he is elaborating on Trump's interest to revitalize the normalization process. And his question is, does the panel think the Arab Gulf countries have any leverage to push for the Palestinian cause in return for a return to normalization with Israel? So these two questions, broad questions on the, can we reflect the question from Dr. Çıraklı? The partners will respond question. Thank you. This question. Does the panel think the Arab Gulf countries have any leverage to push for the Palestinian cause in return for a return to normalization with Israel? As Özlem Hocam actually finished with the two sort of orders, one led by Israeli Gulf countries. Shall I leave the floor to Özlem Hocam first?
Yeah, very short. Maybe other panelists would also like to add, but it was really interesting, I think, to see that none of the countries which has signed or which has normalized relations with Israel has finished their relations with Israel. To the contrary, United Arab Emirates has been calling and calling for connectivity over and over. So I don't think this is going to, lead to any unnormalization in this context. Of course, I think what happened is that Saudi Arabia and normalization with Saudi Arabia is stalled for some time. So the war on Gaza has somehow managed, or Hamas managed, in quotations, to stop the normalization with Saudi Arabia, which I think was one of the reasons of its attack on 7th October. But I don't think this is going to unnormalize the relations. It didn't so far. And regarding this,
any leverage for the Palestinian cause?
Saudi Arabia has been underlining over and over that in order to normalize, it needs a solution to the Palestinian issue. But I don't think that there is anything to use as leverage in this context. And what is, I think, happening in the region with Syria is that, again, nobody is talking about the Palestinian issue. I think this is the worst consequence of the Syrian developments for the regional context, because we were actually, as a novelty, talking about the Palestinian issue. Now we are again back to Syria. And I don't think there is a leverage point to play. I think it has just prolonged the period of a normalization with Saudi Arabia. So here there is a success, but I don't see any leverage. Trump today said that he's not going to do anything about Syria. He's not going to do anything. Let them war, he said, and he will not touch the issue. I believe to the contrary. I think what the 7 October has somehow brought the United States to the Middle East, made it to be interested in Middle East politics more than balanced Russia, in my opinion. And in the coming period, I think the developments in Syria will compel the Trump regime, even if it does not want to deal and tackle with what's happening in Syria. But I don't think there is any leverage to be used against Israel, because I see Israel as the winner, unfortunately. I'm saying unfortunately because I don't approve its Gaza policy at all. But I'm seeing Israel as a winner of what's happening, both in Gaza and in Syria at this stage.
You said you wanted to add a couple of things, and we may actually follow the others as well. Do you want to intervene?
May I?
Nur Hocam?
Oh, thank you,
Yes,
Hocam. Well, I agree with Özlem Hoca, but just a very short comment. Where recently I checked the Abraham Accords Peace Institute's data, and in accordance with the data provided by this institute, bilateral relations between UAE and Israel only decreased by 4% this year. So this is a very stark contrast to Israel's overall trade with the outside world, which declined 18%. Another, I think, important information that I may share at the moment is there has been just in the, I think, last quarter of 2023, 14% drop in Israel-UAE trade. And then it's increased, for example, in the last year with Egypt. And we have also 8% increase trade with Morocco. The only decline that I can share, which is a significant one to some extent, is 8% decrease in the first 9 months of the year with Jordan. What I may add at this point in terms of being a leverage is the Saudi Peace Initiative, which dates back to 2002, because since that day, we can say that Saudi Arabia has been one of the anchor, representing the leading country in terms of discussing and bringing the Palestinian issue to the agenda of the international community. And it seems like that for the last couple of weeks, when I checked the statements of Mohammed bin Salman, it seems like that they started to, in a way, to criticize Israel. And this may, we will going to see to what extent this is going to be, whether it is going to be a leverage or not. But very briefly, what I may add is that that was the thing that I was trying my best to explain, the interplay of the domestic and the regional politics, because at the end of the day, there is a problem, Palestine problem in the region. But as Özlem Hoca said, I'm not underestimating the significance of the change in Syria, but hope it's not going to bring Palestine question again behind the headlines.
Thank you very much, Hocam. Anyone else want to comment on leverage for Palestinian cause? Okay, can I move on to the next question then in this sense? There is a very interesting question from Ruben, actually. He's saying, following the fall of the Vadis regime in Syria, do any of our panelists think that the Palestinian cause died with the Assad regime? Okay. Very brief answers in this sense. There are a couple of questions on Turkey. One is on Gaza policy. If Turkey has a Gaza policy, as Özlem Hocam actually talked briefly, can we say with certitude it has failed miserably?
I don't think it has failed miserably. in the sense that, yes, Turkey threatened. It was more about the talk. It was more about the words. But somehow Turkey, by taking a side, played a role. So its role didn't die. It just didn't really matter much in solving the Gaza issue. But as I said, Turkey was also trying to appeal to the global south. And among the global south, Turkey has put itself as an important defender of all those who were suffering, and used this effectively, I think, in what's happening in Gaza. So I don't think Turkey's Gaza policy ended or failed miserably. Turkey continued, for example, despite its very negative discourse on Israel, continued to have good relations, which it normalized just a few years ago with the Gulf countries. And there was hardly any change in Turkey's normalization with Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. But Turkey just talked, and by talking, it managed to somehow consolidate the domestic constituency, the Arab streets, if they matter at this stage, but also the global south. So to some extent, I mean, we can't say with certitude that it collapsed or failed. It saw its limitations, but I cannot, I think, say it has failed terribly. That would be my answer.
No? Can I move on to the next question? There are a couple of questions actually on Iran. Mozambique, Aka Mozambique is asking basically how the domestic political dynamics in Turkey and Iran explain their weaknesses compared to Israeli military might and diplomatic success. One,
I think
and if I may, yeah, go ahead, Özlem, please.
No, do you want to bring
Özlem, please take
some other? Do you want to bring other questions, Sait Hocam?
There was another one, but let's focus on this one. There was actually
Abu Bakr, I think, posted a question after Parsa, Abu Bakr. Okay, I'll start with the question.
Start on this. I missed out the other one.
Okay, I'll start with the question of Mozambique. Yeah, it's a great question because mostly we are so much focused on the regional dynamics and the external factors, but also there are very important developments internally as well. So in Iran, as you know, I mean, it has been dealing with a serious economic crisis because of the sanctions for a long time. And within that framework, the oppositions in Iran are questioning the economic burden of supporting axis of resistance policy or the proxies. So they are question the cost of supporting proxies in Syria, in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Libya. So they are questioning the cost. And recently, this week, the Iranian newspapers, I mean, the headlines of the Iranian news, some of them, of course, are quite interesting. And some of them wrote that the end for Assad, start for us. So this reflects the economic considerations, economic concerns of Iranians, not just the regional power, not just the from the security perspective, but from the economic perspective, they perceive these regional developments as a chance, as an opportunity for spending their money for themselves or for Iran. So they are mentioning these economic part of failure as well. And also another newspaper questioned to what extent how other policies of Iran are affected by this unsuccessful model. I mean, spending money to others or spending money for supporting militarily, financially, these proxies. So I think that these are very important internal perceptions over the recent regional developments. And if you don't mind, I took some notes from Abu Bakr question as well, Sait Hocam.
Iran losing its position, right, as a Middle East regional power.
Yeah, it was about
the other questions here as well, if I may, from Josue Erifolabi. He's asking, how do you think the future of Iranian diplomacy is going to be affected? I mean, in the context of Abraham Accords and the Israel-Arab normalization after, we see a reset to that.
Okay. In my presentation as well, I mentioned that Iran is definitely losing, or it seems so far. But I mean, losing its regional power, I don't know. I mean, it would be so much to say such losing regional power. So from that question, that there are some ideas came in my mind. I think that there are some options for Iran to keep its regional power by so far. One is quite related with its security policy. Iran would aggressively turn to have a nuclear capability to produce nuclear weapons as soon as possible, because, as you know, there are some signs for taking such a step by Iran, because it increased the amount of enrichment, uranium enrichment. 60% they declared recently, and 90% of the enrichment is enough to produce nuclear weapons. And by now, they jumped the threshold level 20%. By now, just it's a matter of time. It's a matter of political will. So Iran can run to produce nuclear weapons, and this would also change a regional balance of power if it could. But of course, there are lots of challenges because Israel here. I mean, I don't think that Israel would take such a risk, and before that would most probably attack against Iranian nuclear program. As I mentioned in my presentation, it started already. So I don't think that they will wait for Iran to produce a nuclear weapon, and may find some ways to restore proxies. It seems right now quite difficult, but not impossible. Iran can wait for a while and be silent and empower again these proxies. But of course, it will take time because I think that the collapse of Assad regime finalized so rapidly, and this was the easiest part of the picture. And by now, we are entering the most difficult part, because there are various rebels, various opposition groups in Syria, almost 40, and they have to share the political posts. They have to negotiate over restoring the state. I think it will take time, and it's the difficult part for Syrian politics. And Iran, maybe, if Israel and United States will wait for, can empower its proxies. I don't know. It's very quite unlikely, I think.
Thank you, hocam.
Yep, and also the Abraham Accords. The last question. Very quick. I will finish.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so certain because Iranian decision makers perceived Abraham Accords as a mistake and they denied it. And immediately after the Gaza War, they stated that Arab countries vacant, like happened in the Arab Spring period, and Abraham Accords failed totally. And this is the Iranian perception, and I think that they still maintain that perception. But if you ask my own opinion, I think that the Abraham Accords will be re-brought to the agenda and to the negotiation table.
Thank you, hocam. If I may, there is another question from Abdullah El-Kateri, our colleague from the department and Nearest Institute. Did the October the 7th open the Pandora's box, or rather created a trade-off environment? The first question. And a follow-up question on that. In the light of current changes in the region, what is the fate of the Palestinian question? The second one is directed to Ömür hocam. But if I may add to this, like talking about the Pandora's box, Özlem hocam said Israel is a clear winner. And when you look at, for example, the current environment, Hamas is weakened, Hezbollah is weakened, very much eliminated. Syria, Assad regime is gone. The connection between Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas is severed very seriously. We're talking about a new order in the Middle East. We don't know how it's going to come up, but Özlem Hoca gave us hints on that. I think one of the features of that will be actually Israel's unfettered and uncontrollable power in the region. How is that going to influence actually the discussions on the order in the region and, you know, the question of Pandora's box? Like, we see, for example, bombings by Israel of several targets in Syria, destroying the naval sort of structure of Syria, the weaponry structures, for example, the intelligence building as well, occupations in or near Golan Heights, for example. Israel seems to be overly self-confident and, you know, very untouchable at this moment. How is that going to influence that question of order in the region? Ömür hocam, would you like to start?
Sure. About the question, indeed, it is a difficult question because, as you mentioned, as Özlem Hoca mentioned, it's obvious that in the short and the middle, term, Israel is the winner, and Palestine lost Gaza. Therefore, it is, the Palestinian cause was badly affected. But I don't believe that the Palestinian cause is that. We all answered this question. It is not that, of course. We should wait and see. As I mentioned in my presentation, there's a strong leadership. That there's a need for a strong leadership in Palestine. Hamas, badly damaged. Hezbollah, is the loser, and Iran, is weakened. There's a need for a strong, leadership in Palestine. Indeed, maybe it would be an opportunity for Palestinian politics, but in the long run, we have to wait and see the new order. Indeed, and I don't believe that. The Netanyahu government would continue these policies in next 5, 6, 10 years, indeed. Therefore, Trump administration is limited with 4 years. That's obvious. And, Netanyahu government would end. This is natural. and all this international, judicial courts are, they have some cases about Israel, about genocide, etc., etc., and it will have some consequences for Israel in the long run. This is my belief, of course, but in the short run, Israel is the winner. But I don't think that Palestinian cause is that. I will just probably we are still talking about two-state solution. Probably in the West Bank, there should be a Palestinian state, etc., etc.
Thank you hocam. Tuğçe hocam, would you like to comment on Israel?
Yes, indeed. I agree with Özlem Hoca, and maybe all of us are thinking the same thing, that Israel is the winner at the end of the day when we look at the current situation in the Middle East. And when we look at Gaza especially, we see that today Israel is creating fait accompli in Gaza. We witness that Israel is following a deliberate strategy which they call five-finger strategy, and this strategy aims to fragment Gaza into small, isolated, overcrowded enclaves. So, and also Israel is thinking about settling Jewish population in the north of Gaza. So, in terms of Gaza, I don't think that we will be witnessing any plan based on the pre-October 7 situation. So we will be discussing new realities in Gaza also. And this is in a way replicating what's happening in West Bank. So we will see another West Bank in Gaza. So this is, yes, when the October 7 attacks happened, all of us thought about this is the Pandora's box opened. However, today we see destroyed Hamas infrastructure, weakened Hezbollah organization and Hezbollah infrastructure on the one hand. We see weakened and disintegrated Syria. So, and also, as I said in my presentation, there are territorial swipes by Israel in the Syrian territory. So this is telling us that there would be another instability. I see instability and escalations in the Middle East in the near future.
Thank you hocam. Özlem hocam, would you like to comment on Israel and the order? Untouchable Israel.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I was trying to.
You're muted.
Myself.
Okay.
Sorry. Now I'm okay. Very shortly, because I think we have exceeded our time a lot. But I don't think there is a Pandora's box anymore. It is, I think, crystal clear that there are expansionist motives in the region. And there were proxies in this expansionism via proxies for some time. But now I think states are openly expansionist, and they are not shy about this, especially in the case of Israel. Of course, what will happen in Syria, we need to watch very, very closely. But this is definitely, I think, in my opinion, going to be hard politics and hard power played at without any restrictions whatsoever in order to gain territorial gains. So we see a great coming back of geopolitics, which is, I think, nothing very secretive at this time. Sait hocam.
Thank you, hocam. Two very final questions, maybe very quick answers to them. Then the last round for the last words, if I may. One question by Ruben. Actually, shortly, he's trying to understand whether Israel can take on Iran for a preventive cause, in this sense. And the second question by Mozambique. Israel wins, good or bad for Turkey?
Okay, for Ruben's question, I'll say very quickly, I'll answer.
Yes.
Yeah, it can, if it wants. It has such a capability, but of course the dynamics is very important at that sense. And I think that if Israel will do that, I mean, at that time the Pandora's box will open in the Middle East. So we will really talk about that at that time, by that time. Thank you.
Tuğçe hocam? One final word.
Okay. Yes. According to Israeli interpretation, Iran is now vulnerable because of Hezbollah and Hamas defeats. So that's why Israel is concerned that Iran might assemble nuclear weapons in order to overcome this threat perception and this vulnerability, this sense of vulnerability. And also there is this the International Atomic Energy Association report, which also was talking about that Iranians has already accumulated more than 100 kilograms of enriched uranium at the level of 60%. So this is another warning sign for Israel. So that's why there are concerns in the international community, especially in this association, that Israel might decide to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. And so this is likely. This is not likely. I hope it would not be. However, Israel is not shy, as Özlem just said right now. So Israel is taking every opportunity to gain ground in the region. So that's why I can't say anything. But what can I say is that what comes is deeply uncertain in the regional level.
Thank you hocam. Özlem hocam, Israel winning, is this good or bad for Turkey?
At the moment, since their projections about the region is very diverse from each other, Turkey perceives this as negative. But with the Trump era, if he continues to support Israel as he did before, we will see a very delicate balance that Turkey needs to do, both with Israel and the US. And considering Russia is out of the picture for some time now, it seems, with the defeat of Assad, it will be really an interesting time to think. But since the projections of Turkey and Israel regarding the region is completely opposing each other, if Turkey will try to prevent Israel, an Israeli power in the region. So there will be a new competition, I think.
Ömür hocam, would you like to make a final comment? Ömür hocam?
Yes.
Can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, I think I did. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Well,
yes, hocam.
Okay. My connection is weak as far as I understand, but I hope I can, finalize my words. Well, just during this Trump era, Turkey will want to play a role in this conflict. I believe that, just about Hamas, about Palestine, about, in any part of the conflict, Turkey will want to play a role. I am sure that. And Turkey will negotiate, just mainly because of the fact that Turkey wants to play a role, a mediating role in the international conflicts. This is a Turkey's role according to Recep Tayyip Erdogan, our president, indeed. Therefore, Turkey will continue to play this negotiating or mediating role in the Middle East. I can say that. That's all.
Thank you, Hocam. I will actually, if you allow me, give the last words to first Özüm Hocam and then Nur Hocam, as actually collaborators of this, as the main hosts of this meeting as well. Özüm Hocam, while you actually provide your last sentence, there is a very short question as well, which says, what alternative routes could Iran take to maintain access to Lebanon and other regions via Syria? I'm not sure whether there are,
this is quite a tough
right
question, I think. This is very, very tough question, but I'll say few sentences on that. I think that right now, Iranian, there are no signs that they are thinking right now the alternative routes. They are concerning other things, but for the projection, just to kind of a brainstorming, Iraq is still there. Iran has influence over Iraq. Iran has still influence on Iraq. And also regarding Syria, there are lots of uncertainties we do have. And because of that, Israel warned the rebels not to connect with Iran. There are still uncertainties there. And maybe Iran will try to make a connection with some groups in Syria. And also, I think that the rise of ISIS Daesh would create another picture, because as you know, Iran has always been underlining that Daesh is so radical, terrorist, and also they are not representing the Islam. And Iran, on the other hand, they say that they are more negotiable. I mean, moderate, but not moderate Islam. Please do not confuse these terms. But in contrast to ISIS, they are not aggressive as much. So they are portraying themselves as a good alternative for the West in the region. So these are other dynamics in the region that we will face with, I think, in the short run.
Thank you, Hocam. Nur Hocam, the final word is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Sait Hocam. Regarding particularly the question related with the regional order, what I would like to add shortly is what we have seen in the last 1 year, a year of escalation, is also a year of fluctuating, let's say, regional order. But what I would like to add is that there would be certain determining aspects or factors coming, and that would be also, I think, very important in terms of restructuring this regional order, whether it is going to be totally in favor of the role of Israel, or whether the rising role of Israel in the region is without limitations or not. One thing is, of course, the future of Syria. And the second thing is the inauguration of Donald Trump administration in January 2025, because this would also, Ömür Hocam would probably will explain more better. But inauguration of Trump administration would make it more clear with regards to Iranian nuclear deal at the same time. So I think these are the main things. And the last but not the least, what I also see in the regional politics for the last decades, and I'm sure you all probably will agree with me that one of the core terminologies of international relations is balancing. And I think an Arab-led order would be also very much, favored by at least some of the Arab countries in the region. Again, as Özlem Hocam mentioned, the Gulf countries. So there would be a balancing act coming and for the escalation, at least for the upcoming year. And given that I have this opportunity, I would like to thank to all of you, Sait Hocam, Özlem Hocam, Tuğçe Hocam, Ömür Hocam, and Özüm Hocam, for being with us today. And hopefully next year we can do another one, but this one, this is going to be.
Actually, Nur Hocam, I would like to say that one. I think that, I hope our next conference will be in Urla, and we will host all of you in Urla Institute.
And Özüm Hocam, as you all know, this was actually a dream that we discussed in Ankara, and it happened. So I hope it's going to be one of our events next year. And I'm so happy to host and to collaborate with Urla Institute of International Studies, Özüm Hocam. Best of luck.
Thank you
very much again.
It's going to be a pleasure.
Thank you all, Nur Hocam, first of all, for coordinating things on our side, actually. Özüm Hocam, Ömür Hocam, Tuğçe Hocam, and Özlem Hocam for being part of this. The second event of its nature, actually. It's good to see, such strong networks sharing their knowledge with people. We are over 2 hours. Our listeners have been quite patient with us as well, and you have been patient, actually, in supporting this event too. Thanks a lot. On behalf of the 2 institutions, if I may, I'd like to thank you and thank our listeners, actually, for bearing with us. On behalf of, actually, the nearest university departments of Political Science and International Relations, and Urla Institute of International Studies. Thanks, and bye-bye.